Hey, it's Mr. Krieger. We're going to be doing lesson 8 on unit 10. We're going to continue to work on the equation of the circle, and I'm going to show you this thing called completing the square. This will be important, especially for next year in Algebra 2. Okay, so this is stuff that we've seen already. We know that if we want, this is the equation of a circle, and this is the equation of a circle that whose center is not the origin. We can tell that because of the numbers inside the parentheses here, okay? So what we want to do is we want to recognize that the center is going to be the x value in here, but the opposite, so it's going to be a 3. And the y value is going to be the opposite of the y value here, so it's going to be a -2. So the center of this circle is 3, -2. And let's find the radius of the circle. The radius of the circle is going to be the square root of that number. That number is 4. So the radius is going to be the square root of that, which is going to be 2. Now, once we have this information, we could easily make a graph of the circle because you would locate the center being at 3, -2. You put a dot there. That's going to be your center. And then go 2 in every direction from the center and put a dot in those positions. So from the center, go up 2, put a dot there. Go right 2, put a dot there. Down 2, put a dot there. Left 2, put a dot there. And you could complete the circle. Again, you could use a compass if you like, or what I like to do is I like to make quarter circles. So like I'll make a part of a circle like this and like this in order to make the whole circle. It comes out a little better that way. And you're really supposed to write the equation of when you have a graph, you write the equation near it. So this is going to be x minus 3 squared plus y plus 2 squared equals 4. All right, so you could try this problem yourself to graph it. Keep in mind, you know what to do here. What happens if you don't see a number in parentheses? Why don't you think that over? Well, in such a case, we know the center point for the x value, it's going to be -1. But there is no value for the y, so it's going to be 0. So therefore, your center is going to be -1, 0. And this radius is going to be the square root of that number, square root of 9, equals 3. Now it's easy enough to graph. Go to -1, 0, which is this point right here. Go 3 in every direction. 3 up, 3 right, 3 down, and 3 left. And then you could make the quarter circle portions to make, a reasonable looking circle. And then you'll put the equation near it. X plus 1 squared plus y squared equals 9. All right? Okay, so here's some extra practice with circle equations. Write the equation of the circles below. Give the center and given the center and the radius. So here, just to show you, we could do x minus 0 squared plus y minus 6 squared equals, we'll take the radius and square it, which is going to be 81. But when we know the center, one of the values is 0, just like we had over here, we could literally just write x squared. X squared plus y minus 6 squared equals 81. All right? Okay, here's another one. Please try it, and you can watch how I did it. It's going to be x plus 3 squared plus y plus 1 squared equals, and you squared a square root. Square root 7 times square root 7 is just 7. So that's going to be the equation of this circle. Okay, so now we're going to learn a new skill that it'll be really important for you to know for next year. You probably learned it already, or at least, the technique last year in Algebra 1. But before we even take a look at this skill of completing the square, let's review a couple of concepts that you'll need. This is x plus 3 in parentheses squared. Now, if we want to multiply this out, it's literally x plus 3 times x plus 3. That's what the squared means, multiply it by itself. And then you would double distribute. X times x is x squared. X times 3 is 3x. 3 times x is 3x. And 3 times 3 is 9. And this becomes x squared plus 6x plus 9. Take a look at this problem. It looks so similar to this, except backwards. It's telling you to factor this. And there's one slight difference here. There's a minus here. Instead of it being x squared plus 6x plus 9. It's x squared minus 6x plus 9. Now, we know how to factor trinomials like this. You know, you find two numbers that multiply to 9 and add up to negative 6. What's special about this case is that it's the same pair of numbers that multiply to negative 9 and add up to negative 6, namely x minus 3, x minus 3. Now, when you factor, it doesn't always have to be like that, two of the same numbers. It just happens to be a special circumstance where in this kind of trinomial, you get the same number. And that's going to be something that we see when we do completing the square, okay? So I want you to notice, this factors to x plus 3 squared. When we factored this, we got x minus 3 times x minus 3, which can be written as x minus 3 squared. And you're going to see how that's going to be helpful in a minute. All right, so let's go and talk about circle equations. Now, we've looked at circle equations today, you know, on the previous page, and we also saw a little bit on the last lesson. And we noticed that a circle equation has something like x plus or minus something squared plus y plus or minus something squared equals a number. But you could FOIL this out, just like we did here, and FOIL this out, and we could rearrange it to make the equation look like this. And these two equations look very different. And by the way, these two equations might not be, well, actually, these are the same equation and just in different forms. And you might say, how are these equivalent? Because they've been rearranged. Now, how do we get from here to here? Not too difficult. We would multiply this out like we did here. We'd multiply this out. We'd combine all the like terms and put all the numbers by themselves on that side, and it would turn into this. What we want to do is we want to take an equation in this form, which we call the expanded form, and put it back into the general form, the one that we've been seeing in the first page of this lesson and also on the previous lesson. Now, you might say, how do you even know that this is a circle equation? Well, one of the key features of a circle equation is that there's going to be an x squared term and a y squared term. In a linear equation, there's no squared terms. In a parabola, only the x is squared, but in a circle, there'll be an x squared term and a y squared term. Now, when we see an equation that looks like this, the bad thing about this is you can't look at this equation and identify the center and the radius. The radius is not the square root of 36. It's not. But if you take this equation and put it back into this form of the equation, you can easily see the center and the radius. The center is going to be 3, negative 2, and the radius is going to be the square root of 7. Okay? So now, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to take an expanded form of a circle equation and put it into the general form. And we do that by completing the square. All right? So I'm going to rewrite this a little bit larger so you can see a little better, right? We've got x squared plus 4x plus y squared minus 8y equals 5. I'm just rewriting it so you can see it better. And we'd like to get this into the form of the general form so we could easily identify the center and the radius. Step 1, rewrite this to leave a space after the x term like this. X squared plus 4x, leave some space, plus y squared minus 8y, leave some space, equals 5. In these spaces right here, we're going to have a plus something. And whatever we add here, we're going to add to this side. And whatever we add here, we're going to add to this side. We're going to be using a technique called half square share. Okay, half square share. I'll write that here. Half square share. And this technique is not difficult because you just follow the procedure. So the first part, half. We're going to have to do this part twice. We're going to have to take half of this number. So this number here is 4 divided by 2. That's the half part. Now we're going to square that number. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 squared is 4. It's a coincidence that it happens to be 4 too. And now we're going to share it. The 4 goes here in this position, and it's also going to go right after the equal sign, right after this 5 in this position. This is what we're sharing. This is balancing the equation because whatever we add to one side of an equation, as long as we add it to the other side as well, we keep the equation balanced and we don't make any kind of mathematical error that way, okay? You might be wondering why we're doing this in the first place, but you're going to see the rationale in a few minutes after we get to the next part. Because we're going to have to do half square share one more time, and that's on this number, the -8. So we're going to take -8 and divide it by 2. So we take half of this, that's -8 divided by 2 is -4. We're going to square that number. Now, when you square a negative number, it's always going to become positive. That's why I put a plus here. So -8 divided by 2 is -4, and -4 squared is going to become +16. And you're going to share it. You're going to put it here, and you're going to share on this side. Okay? So now watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to rewrite this. X squared plus 4x plus 4 plus y squared minus 8y plus 16. And on this side, I'm going to combine all these terms. And when I combine 5 and 4 and 16, that's going to become 25. Okay, the last part of the problem, to finish it up and to get it to look like the general form, is to factor this trinomial here, just like we factored this trinomial here. Find two numbers that multiply to 4 and add up to 4. So that's going to be 2. So you're going to get x plus 2 and x plus 2. You're going to do the same thing with this trinomial. Find two numbers that multiply to 16 and add up to -8. That's going to be -4. So you're going to get y minus 4 and y minus 4. Notice, -4 times -4 is 16, and -4 minus 4 is -8. That equals 25. But remember up here, when we factored this, x minus 3 times x minus 3, we could write it as x minus 3 squared. Well, we could write this as x plus 2 squared. And we can write this as y minus 4 squared. Okay? Now, this is in the general form, the form we like, where we can easily see what the center of the circle is and what the radius is. So the center of this circle is going to be the opposite of this number and the opposite of this number, which is -2 and +4. And the radius of this circle is going to be the square root of this number, which is going to be 5. So you got your center and your radius, and you were able to get the equation that looked like this in the expanded form, and we were able to get it to the general form. And then with the general form, the nice thing is you can easily figure out the center and the radius. All right. Let's go take a look at the last page. So the last page just gives you the steps that we had just done to do the problem number 1. So you could read those over if you have any questions. And we'll do another example for practice. You could stop the video and try this for yourself, and then you could watch how I do this. I'm going to rewrite this a little bit larger so you can see it better. So x squared minus 20x plus y squared plus 6y equals 35. And as I said before, I like to write it so that I leave some room after this x. So you can put a plus and a blank, plus y squared plus 6y plus a blank equals 35. And then you need two places to share. The number you put here is going to be shared here. The number you put here is going to be shared here. Kind of didn't leave myself a lot of room there. All right, now we're going to do the half square share. Half of what? First, we do half of this number. So -20 divided by 2, that's going to be -10. We're going to square the -10. When you square a negative, it's always going to be positive. That's going to be 100. You're going to get a 100 here, and we're going to get a 100 over here. We have to do the same thing over here for the y's, the 6y. That 6 has to be halved, squared, and shared. So take 6 and divide it by 2, which is going to be 3. We're going to take 3 squared. 3 squared is 9. We're going to put the 9 here, and we're going to share it there. So literally, we share it on both sides, and that's to keep the equation balanced. Whatever we did to one side, we also did to the other. We added 100 here, we added 100 here. We added 9 here, we added 9 here. I'm going to rewrite this so we can work with it a little more easily. And let me add all this together. So that's going to be 144. And now this trinomial here, we're going to factor it. Find two numbers that multiply to 100 and add up to negative 20. It has to be the same number. It's going to be x minus 10 times x minus 10. And here we're going to have to find two numbers that multiply to 9 and add up to to positive 6. So that's going to be y plus 3 and y plus 3. As I told you before, this can be written in this way. X minus 10 times x minus 10 is x minus 10 squared. This can be written as y plus 3 squared. And now we could easily see what the center and the radius are for this circle. The center is going to be 10 and negative 3, 10 comma negative 3. And the radius is going to be the square root of 144, which is 12. So you see the benefit of having this form of the equation, because you could easily tell what the center and the radius is. Okay, so work on your homework.